My name is Jocelyn Young, and I'm the CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. In the job now, this is week 8, so here I am, I'm still alive. I'm also the acting executive director of the South Surrey and White Rock Chamber of Commerce. Today's lunch is focused on LNG, mining and forestry, BC's natural resource industries, with Minister Jagrup Brar. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwantlen, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kikite, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen First Nations. As well, I acknowledge the Inuit and Métis Nations people who live and work on these territories. It is now my pleasure to thank the sponsors of this event. Our supporting sponsors, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers and Wood Fibre LNG. Yeah, thank you. And our progress partners throughout the year, the Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan by SNF Group Benefits, Focus College, and Western Community College. Thank you. If this is your first time attending one of our events, then allow me to introduce us to you. The Surrey Board of Trade and the South Surrey and White Rock Chamber of Commerce are independent, nonprofit associations and are a concierge of connections for Surrey and White Rock's business communities, where we deliver a diversified service portfolio of business development, support for international trade, government advocacy, and workforce development. We support business and attract business, which is now more vital than ever. We're all about helping businesses grow and thrive in our communities. That's really what it's all about. Whether it's connecting people, offering resources, or pushing policies that support local businesses, we're here to make sure Surrey and White Rock continue to thrive. We're proud to be a voice for businesses of all sizes and from all sectors, bringing energy and innovation to the region. Before we dive into the program, please help me welcome some guests in the audience. Of course, we have our guest of honor, the BC Minister of Mining and Critical Minerals, Mr. Jagrup Brar. We have Amna Shah, BC Parliamentary Secretary for Mental Health and Addictions and MLA for Surrey City Centre. We have Minister Gary Begg, Public Safety and Solicitor General. And we have Chief Ian Campbell of the Squamish Nation and Wood Fibre LNG. Thank you. Thanks for attending. Please also help me welcome the Surrey Board of Trade Director. We just have one here today. He's always here keeping an eye on me. This is what's happening. We have Rory Morgan, the Chair of the Surrey Board of Trade, and with KSW Lawyers. Okay. BC's natural resources are more than a source of pride. They are a cornerstone of economic strength and global relevance. Our forestry, LNG, petroleum, and mining industries not only drive provincial and national prosperity here in Canada, they anchor communities and attract the sustained interest of international markets, particularly the U.S. In an era marked by protectionist trade policies and strategic resource positioning, exemplified by President Trump's aggressive trade posture, it's evident that Canadian resources are not just valuable, they are highly sought after strategic assets. And of course, we can see what's happening down south and how much they want what we have. To tell us more about how BC is responding and diversifying our markets for our natural resources, it is my pleasure to introduce your speaker this afternoon. He was first elected as the MLA for Surrey Panorama Ridge in 2004 and served until 2013, and then served as the MLA for Surrey Fleetwood from 2017 until now. He was appointed the Minister for Mining and Critical Minerals in November of last year, and he previously served as Minister of State for Trade. Everyone, please help me welcome BC's Minister of Mining and Critical Minerals, the Honourable Jagrup Brar.
It's a great city where future lives. Good afternoon, everyone. After the lunch, I think you can respond better. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Jocelyn, for the kind introduction. And welcome to Surrey Board of Trade. And I wish you well moving forward. Right? I also would like to start by acknowledging the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including Samiamo, Ketsi, Kwi-Kwantlen, Kwantlen, Cookite, and Twasan First Nations. I also would like to introduce my two colleagues with me. I have Amna Shah. She is the MLA from Surrey Center and also Parliamentary Secretary for Mental Health. And my colleague Gary Beck, I brought him to make sure my security is pretty tight. So he is the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. So, Surrey Board of Trade, I was introduced to Surrey Board of Trade probably a long time ago. I don't want to mention the year. So when I was the executive director of Surrey, what we call the Surrey, the Self-Employment and Entrepreneur Development Society. I was the executive director of that society, which used to help the newcomers, not the newcomers, everybody who have new ideas to help them put together the business plan, and then they can go and start their own business. So I've been working with Surrey Board of Trade since then. I want to say this based on my experience as a worker in the nonprofit sector and as the, of course, MLA and a minister in the provincial legislature, the Surrey Board of Trade has always been a very strong voice for businesses. Of course, that's part of their key mandate. But on top of that, they have always stood up for some very important social causes like childcare, housing, and all that, because those impact the business community's ability to move forward. So I want to say thanks to you and your membership for the work you're doing for the businesses, and I wish you well for moving forward. So today, an enormous thanks to Surrey Board of Trade for hosting this event, inviting me and my colleagues to this event, and particularly to me to talk about BC's thriving mining sector. Perhaps they know how much I like talking about mining and its importance in shaping our province's future. As I always say, and I say that seriously, I consider myself really lucky to be the minister for the best ministry, for the best sector. No offense, Gary, best ministry, Ministry of Mining. And it is always a pleasure to talk about the critical work we are doing to expand its reach to other markets, ensure it is sustainable growth, and fortify the sector as a whole. But before I begin, I would like to thank all the organizations and leaders present here from various sectors, including mineral exploration, my friend somewhere here, and energy, environmental management, forestry, LNG, for your invaluable participation in this event. So thanks for coming. Now, the mining, exploration and mining sector industry is a cornerstone, as said by Jocelyn, of our economy, and it's true, driving prosperity and unlocking potential for all British Columbians in this province, and creating good family supporting jobs to the people of British Columbia, and providing critical minerals critical to grow our green economy, and also advance reconciliation with First Nations at the same time. The industry provides approximately 40,000 good-paying family-supporting jobs to the people, direct jobs to the community across the province. And in 2024, mineral exploration expenditure amounted to more than $550 million, the fourth highest amount on record. And mining production value is forecasted at around $16.5 billion this year. Those are strong numbers, even if in the face of economic headwinds we have seen in the global market. And I really appreciate the hard work and dedication of all those who have contributed to this success. There are 70 publicly traded senior companies in BC and 579 publicly traded junior company headquartered in BC, which is another sign of the importance of mining and exploration in our province. And here in Surrey, which is my home, I have been elected from here 6 times by the people of Surrey. I want to say thanks to them before I say anything else for putting their faith in me and electing me to represent them in Victoria and here in the community. So here in Surrey, we have about 185 mining supply chain companies, and that generate about $72 billion in business annually. So even if we look at the lower mainland as a region, every direct job at a mine or smelters in BC support at least 2 jobs in supply or services, many of which are in this region. So if we look at the mining sector and the impact of mining sector, minings are, as we all know, in the remote areas where, it's sometimes hard to go even there. But the people who supply them, the materials and all that, they're all in lower mainland. So there's a lot of jobs mining create in the urban setting. Usually sometimes people think about the mining only creates jobs there, but mining creates actually more jobs in the urban setting because 1 job creates 2 jobs, and that's here. So not only that, BC is geologically rich and is responsibly producing many of the critical minerals and metals that are essential to fight climate change and ensure economic security. In fact, we are Canada's largest producer of copper. We produce 60% of the copper of this nation in this province. And the only producer of what we call the molybdenum. It took me quite a time to pronounce this, molybdenum, right? If you can't, you say moly, right? With 18 operating mines and 2 smelters producing these and other critical minerals in the province of British Columbia. In total, our province has high potential to produce over half of the 34 critical minerals identified on Canada's critical mineral list. So they have 34 on their list, the Canadian government. We can produce half of those in the province of British Columbia, many of which are very important, vital for low carbon technology. We have an opportunity to be key supplier globally of these critical minerals. Right now there are 21, I am saying 21, Mr. Goring may say a bit more, but 21 upcoming critical minerals projects. This is a critical minerals project. We have some other projects too at different stages that could help BC realize that potential. If successful, if we realize all those projects, these projects represent a projected impact of about $40 billion capital investment in this province and about 10,000 direct jobs in the industry by 2040. And job in the mining sector, they're pretty well-paid jobs. Average job is $130,000 and more, or not less. Now, the permitting discussion has been going on, not only in the province of British Columbia, but globally, about how do you deal with permitting process, particularly what we heard from the other side. So to help realize this government is thoroughly committed to permitting faster, while maintaining our strong regulatory framework. In the face of increasing uncertainty, as we know, with the U.S., the province has been focusing on welcoming and accelerating investment that diversifies and strengthens our economy in this province. The Premier has listed 18 resource projects that will be fast-tracked to this end, and 4 of these projects are mining projects. thanks to Michael Goring to help us to put together this list. As part of our work to strengthening permitting timeline, we have convened our senior deputy ministers from across critical sectors with a firm mandate to clear what we call the obstacles and drive decisions and move project forward quickly. So there are 8 deputy ministers, which are head of the departments. We have put together a team who are in the natural sector. So they work together as a team to, assess those programs and eliminate any barriers they have. So targeted short-term, time-sensitive decisions are being made right now for these projects to expedite these projects that will benefit the province's economy, natural gas, forestry, and mining sectors. The work will include reducing regulatory overlap with a focus on accelerating specific major projects and applying improvement across the board. Our efforts have also resulted in a systemic change to ensure that unnecessary delays and bottlenecks are removed while maintaining environmental standards, which we have high standards, and meeting the requirement to consult the First Nations, and there's no compromise in both. Working directly with stakeholders, we will identify and resolve challenges to make sure that we are doing everything we can from government side to move project through to construction. The goal is to have clear permitting standards and objectives that will make the process effective and will boost business confidence in BC. We have already taken actions in the province of British Columbia to reduce what we call the major mine applications review process by 35%. So that's a huge reduction in time by running parallel applications, but not reducing any standards. And also reducing the regional permitting backlog by 52% since 2022. And we are taking more actions. We are taking more actions to bring more efficiencies to make sure we have fixed timelines. It's a bit ambitious goal. I think Michael will agree with it. But we are focused on that so that we can provide certainty and stability to the industry so we can bring more investment from outside and make the mining sector even better. The work will include, every success story in our province comes down to its people. And it is no different for mining and exploration sector. Dedicated, hardworking people like you who do their job with expertise, innovation, and vision to ensure that the mining and exploration sector continue to provide good family-supporting jobs, attract investment, to build our economy, partner with the First Nations, and put workers' safety and environmental sustainability at the forefront of the projects. Your commitment to excellence and your perseverance to overcome challenges is truly inspiring. So I want to say thanks to all of you for your hard work. I just want to say, when you talk about a mine, I know there are some people in this room who know the full mining sector, and it took me quite a bit of time to understand what is the full mining sector. So they say if there are 1,000, to create one mine, there will be 1,000 exploration junior company will be doing, and one mine will come out of that. And so we have 5,000 people who are working in this province who create, like, after 1,000 efforts, one mine. So that's the kind of hard work people are doing. I really appreciate their work. So thank you very much. I look forward and remain fully committed to supporting the mineral exploration and mining sector industry in BC moving forward. I will be happy to, if there's any question. So thanks once again for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister Brar. Now let's get started with our panel of speakers. I invite the following to take their seats on stage with me. We have Michael Goring, President and CEO of the Mining Association of BC. We have Kurt Niquidet, Vice President and Chief Economist of the BC Council of Forest Industries, and Richard Wong, Vice President, Regulatory and Operations, Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. Thank you. Come on up. Oh, it's a little crowded. We're trying something new with the chairs. Is this on? Hello, hello? Yes, can you hear me? Great. Okay. So to get us started, I'm going to ask you all to provide some opening comments. And I think you were told around 5 minutes, but if you need 6 minutes, 7.
I have a 25 minute.
We will get there. Okay. So why don't we start with you, Michael, since you have so much to say.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. And congratulations on your appointment, Jocelyn. It is a pleasure to be here today on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples and to follow Minister Brar. And I will tell everybody from a first-hand view, the minister has jumped into mining and is really leaving no stone unturned and getting to know the portfolio, and it's been a pleasure working with you, and thank you for your support. And great to be here with my co-panelists from Kofi and Cap and the Explorers. And this is great timing for us because May is mining month. I know you all knew that. So it's a great time to give a real brief update on mining in BC. And you're getting kind of a double-double here because Minister just made mention of some facts on mining. But I think it's important to note, first of all, it's great to be here with natural gas and oil, timber, paper, pulp, and mining, because together the three of these industries have kind of the low carbon minerals, metals, timber, LNG that the world wants and needs. And it's something that's, you know, in some ways unique to British Columbia, and we do it right and we do it responsibly. So I think it's important to cast a light on that. And we're all experiencing kind of the whipsaw of U.S. tariffs. They've been felt clearly all across Canada. And those tariffs are threatening jobs, communities, community stability, and the public services that we all rely on. So, and I think that really underscores a stark reality that we all face, and that is that Canada and British Columbia must take bold action to secure our economic sovereignty. And so from the mining perspective, what is our path forward? I can tell you with confidence, and I think you heard it from Minister Brar, that mining can secure BC's economic future and our long-term prosperity. We have the critical minerals, the precious metals, the gold and silver, and the steel-making coal that our allies need. And I think we are at a bit of a turning point here in BC. We have the possibility and the potential to drive a new wave of economic growth and economic resiliency in the face of this economic uncertainty and volatility. And so how do we get there? The Minister mentioned we currently have 18 mines operating in BC, 2 smelters, but there are more projects on the horizon. And we just released an economic impact study 2 weeks ago at the outset of Mining Month. And we looked at 27 new potential projects. 18 are critical mineral projects, 6 are precious metal, so those are gold and silver projects, and then 3 steel-making coal projects. And we don't differ with projects that the minister was referring to. It's just a different way of us looking at what's out there right now in terms of their development. The story, though, the headline is the analysis indicates that the near-term economic impacts associated with just the development and construction of those projects includes, that would be $41 billion in near-term investment. That's over kind of the 3-year development and construction period for each project. Tens of thousands of new jobs. In fact, $27 billion in income for labor for the construction of those projects. That's a lot of money in people's jeans in BC. And $12 billion in new tax revenue for government in the province at all 3 levels. The total economic activity associated with the construction and development of those projects, it's about $90 billion over 3 years. So it's substantial. And here in Southwest BC, and when I say Southwest, I mean Greater Vancouver and Vancouver Island, the benefits would be huge. And I think, a fact that is lost on many people, and Minister Brar made reference to this, is that most people in Metro Vancouver look at mining as something that's happening in rural areas of the province. But those 27 projects, their development and construction would generate almost $13 billion in economic activity in Southwest BC through their development and through the supply chain that is here, right here in Surrey. The suppliers themselves would benefit to the tune of $9 billion in additional spending on goods and services during their construction. So clearly, Surrey and the other 17 communities in Greater Vancouver is a mining community. It actually is one of the top 5 urban communities for mine spending in BC, and the minister mentioned this. There's some 185 mine suppliers in the city. Some of the better well-known suppliers include Van Camp Freightways, that, if it wasn't for them, we couldn't bring stuff back and forth between urban BC and the rural parts of the province. Precision Pulley and Idler, an industrial equipment manufacturer, which is just down the road from here. So as global demand grows, and it is growing for the minerals and metals that we have here in BC, we can leverage our strategic location, our skilled workforce, and a stable political climate. And all those 3 things give us a distinct advantage. So we're uniquely positioned to play a central role in providing our allies and partners with the materials they require. So we need to get things moving in BC. And the minister mentioned their government is focused on permitting, and indeed they are, and we're pleased to see at the most recent provincial election in the fall that there was bipartisan support for speeding mine permitting. And the creation of a standalone mining ministry is also very encouraging. And we were actually pleased to see legislation 2 weeks ago, Bill 15, who you may have heard something about, and it proposes faster approvals for major projects deemed provincially significant, and we're also very supportive of that and supportive of its application to all commodities in the province. So these are good signs that the province wants to get stuff done. We need to get stuff done, and I think British Columbians want to see stuff get done. There are some challenges, and we're working through those, accelerating mine permitting, supporting First Nations capacity and equity investments in the industry, and also expanding in our electricity grid. These things are, on the move, and the system is working on it. So we're pleased to see the momentum that's building. So while we have what the world needs, BC Mining has what the world needs, mining has what BC needs. So we need to act urgently and boldly. We need to get those mines built for the benefit of all British Columbians and Canadians. And we're pleased to be working hand in hand with the government of BC and our First Nation partners to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Kurt, it's your turn. You can sit here or you can go up to the yeah. There you go.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jocelyn. And very glad to be here. As mentioned, I represent the Council of Forest Industries. The forest sector is smaller than it once was, but still is a sizable contribution to the economy in British Columbia. Our last economic impact study showed that we support about 100,000 jobs in the province. That's sort of the direct jobs as well as the indirect jobs. Similar to what was mentioned by Michael and the minister, really a lot of these direct jobs are happening in the sort of rural area right across the province, but a lot of the sort of indirect and sort of service sector supporting the forest sector is actually happening in the Lower Mainland as well. And so for Surrey, for example, in our sort of latest sort of supply chain work that we did, showed that there's about $300 million worth of expenditure on Surrey suppliers to the forest sector, almost $1 billion for Vancouver suppliers in Vancouver. So that the forest sector also in terms of exports, we pack a big punch. We exported about $11 billion worth of forest products last year. That's actually down from sort of around $17 billion a couple years prior to that. And a lot of that is headed to the U.S., also to sort of Asia-Pacific markets. I'll touch on why that's a concern with the recent issues with the U.S. But in terms of exports and contribution to the province, we're the second largest export category. And so we still represent a sizable contribution to our exports. We're facing a number of different headwinds, and so the forest sector has really been kind of in crisis mode really the last couple years, and there's a couple of different factors. There's sort of a internal to British Columbia, there's a made in BC problems and issues, which I think we have some control over and we could work on fixing that. And then there's some big external factors. And so I'll touch first on the internal issues, sort of similar to other resource sectors. We've been facing a lot of issues associated with permitting. And so access to the actual timber supply, the raw material for the sawmills, the pulp mills, that's absolutely critical for just daily operations, but also having security over and consistency over that supply, thinking about future investment. And so there's been really the province in terms of some of the permitting has been really quite a challenge. Another issue around the timber supply has been with the BC government's auction agent. So 20% of the timber supply has been issued to an agency called BC Timber Sales. And they've only been selling about 10% of that. So they've been really struggling to get that timber to the market and in a reliable way. So there's a review of BC Timber Sales happening right now. I think that's a good thing, but it's really important to get BC Timber Sales operating back as they should. And around the permitting, there's a number of different things that could be done there. We're working closely with the Minister of Forests on those issues, and we're hopeful that they can get resolved. Another issue internal to British Columbia that could be addressed is revenue sharing with First Nations. This is something that the government has increased their revenue sharing and has started to move. Our members as well in the industry have been moving towards more partnerships with First Nations, but there's more to be done there, particularly on the revenue sharing. They're sort of working on a new fiscal framework that sort of that's got installed, and so I think more can be done on that front. That's all sort of the internal issues, a lot of it related to timber supply. The chief forester in the province sets the timber supply, the sort of the maximum amount of sustainable amount, and that's set right now at about 60 million cubic meters, but we're actually harvesting at about 35 million. So there's a big gap between sort of what we're actually harvesting and what our potential sort of sustainable level is. So we've been actually advocating at COFI for a 45 million cubic meter target. We think that's doable. It's still a sustainable level, and we're working with the Minister of Forests on that. And if we could do that, I think we could contribute a lot more in terms of our economic impacts to the province. So I'll maybe just finish off on sort of talking about the external factors, which are very difficult to control, but it's been something For the forest sector, we've been dealing with for a long time. A lot of sectors dealing with the recent Trump tariff threats. But for the forest industry, particularly for the softwood lumber industry, we've been without a softwood lumber agreement since 2015. And every year we've been sort of faced with these different duties that get recalculated. And so currently, the amount of duties on deposit is around $10 billion. It's just sitting on deposit, and we've been challenging the U.S. At the sort of USMCA around these duties. Until that gets resolved, those duties are going to be sitting on deposit, and it could get resolved either through litigation, through these sort of panels, or it could get resolved through another negotiated settlement. So we've been advocating with the federal government, they need to make this a priority, gets another softwood lumber agreement. Because we are facing, currently we're facing 14.4% duties, but they're set to rise later this year. So we're expecting that they could go up to about 35% this fall, and that's going to be a huge headwind on the sector. About 75% of our softwood lumber exports are destined to the U.S. It's our major market. And then on top of that, President Trump issued what's called a Section 232 investigation on timber, lumber, and its derivative products. It's sort of another thing that could be coming on top of the duties. So on the trade side of things, it's got to be a major priority for us, and we've been really working with the province and advocating with the province to the federal government that we need to either support the sector through this or else get a new softwood lumber agreement. So I'll maybe end there, and looking forward to the discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kurt. Richard, let's hear from CAP.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And thanks very much for having me here this afternoon. It's actually my second time here at this table. I was here 2 years ago. And I have to say, that was like right when I was first in my new role. And y'all made me very nervous. But this time it was like just coming home. So I'm really glad to be here. And congratulations to Jocelyn on your appointment. I'm sure you'll do great in your new role. It is a pleasure to be here in Surrey. When you think of oil and gas, you don't always think of Surrey, but I think, as the minister has said, in the case of all of our natural resource industries, they're not just Northeast BC industries, they're not just Northern BC industries, they're BC industries, period, full stop. So we're glad to be here, to be a part of the conversation today. As you heard, my name is Richard. I am the VP of Regulatory and Ops at CAP, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. We are a research-based, nonpartisan industry association. We represent the oil and gas producers of Canada, from the smallest of the small to the largest publicly traded companies. And our job is really to advocate for smart policies that support competitiveness, that support long-term investment, and support sustainable growth here in BC and across Canada. I think if I wrap up sort of what I've heard from some of my co-panelists, we're really at a pivotal moment here in time. I can't think of a time that's been more chaotic other than perhaps March of 2020. And we really have an opportunity to take advantage of the momentum that we feel right now. We have a new federal government. They have a bold ambition. They want to be, they want to make Canada the best performing economy in the G7. And that's an aspiration that I think we all share. But to achieve it, we have to be able to play to our strengths. And I think one of the biggest strengths, probably one of the most underutilized strengths that we have, is responsible energy development, responsible resource development, as you see from the folks on the stage. If we start here in BC, in the context of oil and natural gas, the province has the potential to become a global energy powerhouse, not just someday, but starting now. If we look at LNG Canada Phase 2 and the Silicium's LNG project moving forward, and we believe that they can and should, that's a nation-building potential. And I would also just say it's not just about exports. I mean, obviously we talk about LNG in the context of exports, but it's also about what these exports make possible in terms of good jobs, in terms of government revenues to support important and essential services. It's about the Indigenous partnerships, and it's about emissions reductions in countries that are still very much reliant on coal and other higher emitting sources of energy. What makes BC competitive is isn't just its resource base, but it's how it develops those resources. And we're already advancing some of the most responsibly produced natural gas in the world. Methane emissions are down. We'll talk a bit more about that. Electrification is underway in parts of the upstream and with some of the LNG terminals. And we're seeing unprecedented indigenous ownership and partnership as a part of our industry. And that's ultimately what global buyers want. They want lower carbon, they want responsibly produced energy. Canada, and importantly BC in particular, can be that supplier of choice. If we zoom out a little bit and look at global LNG demand is projected to continue to grow, 60% by 2040. And that's going to be fueled by all sorts of things, whether it's economic growth in Asia, decarbonization of heavy industries, or the surge in AI-related power demand. And countries like Japan and South Korea, China, India are going to be looking for stable suppliers of LNG. And we have those resources, we have the workers, we have the standards that the world wants, but in order to realize that potential, we need to kind of get out of our own way. In 2015, neither Canada nor the US exported any LNG. Today, the US is the world's largest LNG exporter, and Canada's first project, LNG Canada, while that's still a major win, is still just under construction, and it represents just a fraction of that total US build-out. And over the past decade, we've seen over $280 billion in energy projects that have been canceled here in Canada for a variety of reasons, but due in part to regulatory delays, policy uncertainty, and just sheer lack of coordination. And so when I look at that number, I really think to myself, it's not just a missed opportunity, it's a bit of a self-inflicted wound. And we can't afford to have that happen again, not when the stakes are as high as they seem to be right now. I also just want to say it isn't about abandoning our climate ambitions either. Clearly, Canadians, British Columbians care about the environment, and so do we, but they also care about things like job security, they care about affordability, they care about energy reliability. And the key thing is, these things don't have to be in conflict with one another. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Over the last 12 years, our industry has demonstrated that it's able to grow and it's able to decarbonize at the same time. Our emissions are down 22%, our methane emissions are down almost 40%, but production is up 35%. And so that's what responsible development can look like. But in order to keep doing that, we need to sort of clear the way, and you heard a bit about it from my co-panelists, around modernizing the permitting and the regulatory process and the fiscal systems, aligning climate and competitiveness goals, and then also respecting provincial jurisdiction, recognizing that the provincial government is the one, indeed, that's best placed to regulate its resources. And then importantly, tying that all together, it's really important to restore investor confidence and kind of bring all of that capital back to Canada, to BC, because it's important to get all of these projects built. I would also say in the context of Indigenous economic reconciliation, talked a bit about that, we're seeing more Indigenous equity ownership for major projects, but those opportunities really only matter if those projects can get built. And so I think sometimes we feel like proliferation of policies means progress. Those things are not synonymous. We need to have a bit more of a coordinated approach that makes Canada an investment-ready and worthy destination. If I look at what's kind of in play in our sector right now, $26 billion in oil and gas projects are under construction, another $100 billion are under consideration, and by next month, hopefully, LNG Canada Phase 1 will begin shipping LNG to Asia, marking Canada's entry into that global LNG trade. And we obviously have a geographic advantage here in BC. We are much closer to Asia, 10 days versus 20 days. We don't need to go through the Panama Canal. And obviously, our very cold Canadian winters make it more beneficial and optimal for the liquefaction process, makes it cheaper, easier, a bit more energy efficient. And so we have a lot of advantages here. We have cost efficiency, we have low carbon, and we're strategically located. And just before I end off, I'll just say, you know, the public, I think, is also ready to have this conversation. We saw that through the recent federal election. 90% of Canadians say that oil and gas is vital today. 70% believe that it'll remain an important sector for the future. In BC, natural gas royalties are forecasted to double by 2026, helping to fund those essential public services. I'll also say the BC government is also moving quickly, to its credit, fast-tracking pipelines, LNG terminals, and power transmission projects. But as we've heard from my fellow co-panelists, we need to turn that momentum into movement and really match those policy signals with real project certainty. So I guess if I leave you with any message, what's the opportunity for BC? I think BC has an opportunity to lead Canada's next chapter of economic growth, whether it's from oil and natural gas, whether it's from forestry, whether it's from mining and critical minerals. And we get to show the world what responsible energy development really looks like, turning world-class resources into jobs, into revenue, into economic reconciliation, into global influence. I would also say now is not the time for hesitation. We're really good at doing that as Canadians. It's the time for confidence, it's the time for clarity, and it's the time for a bit more ambition.
Thank you, Richard. Well said. Minister Brar, I see you're done your dessert. Would you like to join us on stage for the Q&A? I know he loves the dessert. Did everyone get some? Yes, please. It's ready. I will now open up our conversation to dialogue with questions from the audience. If you have a question, please go to the microphone here in the middle, and please state your name, company, and then ask your question. And I also ask that your questions be brief and respectful. I will get us started with the first questions. All right. So, Minister Brar, why don't we start with you to set the tone for the conversation?
Sure.
The hot seat. What strategies, if we're talking about trade diversification, what strategies is your ministry implementing to diversify BC's trading markets amidst ongoing geopolitical tensions, particularly with the U.S.? Just a small question.
Particularly with the U.S. So I don't need to repeat that what we're facing right now from the United States of America. First of all, I want to say this, that it's a hard lesson to learn that we have to diversify our trade into other markets. But the good news is for the province of British Columbia that we have probably the lowest percentage of trade with the USA as compared to many other, not many, the other big provinces. We have about 50% of our trade with USA, and 50% of our trade goes to Asia. Whereas as compared to that, the Alberta, 76%, if you go to Ontario, it goes even over 80%. So we are in a good spot that way, but we have been already working on to diversify our trade with other markets other than, of course, USA. When I was Minister of Trade, we opened 3 new markets. We opened new markets in Taiwan, we opened new market in Vietnam, we opened new market in Mexico, which means we opened our standalone office. They are there, they're sitting, meeting with local business people. If there's any trade mission from here, they arrange everything and they connect with the local people. If there's any trade mission from Vietnam coming this way, mining company, so they will arrange a meeting with the mining company of those mining company. So we have opened the 3 new markets, and we will continue to open more. So that's what we are doing to respond to that situation when it comes to the trade diversification. We are also doing, in addition to that, we are diversifying trade within the province. Historically, if you look at in the past, the trade was only possible to do by big corporation with resources and all that. That time has changed. Now even the smallest shop in Surrey can do trade anywhere in the world because of the new technology, because we are a communication system and all that kind of stuff. So we are now also diversifying trade to bring in minority people, First Nation people into it, and small and medium-sized businesses, so that everybody can participate in this and we can grow the trade. So that's what we're doing when it comes to expansion of the trade.
Great, thank you. So we've heard a little bit about the current state of your industries to my panelists here, but I would like to dig into some details and talk about what are the biggest challenges or opportunities facing you today. Michael, can you get us started?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned during my opening remarks, I think, the number one obstacle for mining in British Columbia, the thing that is holding the sector back is kind of the complexity and timeline, duration of time it takes for a project to be permitted and approved. There's certainly, there's a significant amount of willingness now within government, both provincially and federally, to work on that. And I think that's both at the, for operating mines and I believe also on the exploration side. To be fair and frank, we've been talking about it for some time. But now I believe we have government's full attention and work is being done. There's a review underway of the environmental assessment process. The ministry is looking at, the EA along with what we require in our sector is a mines, what they call Mines Act permits, Environmental Management Act permits. How can we kind of bring all of those three processes together into one kind of concurrent permitting process? So it's not easy. There's no silver bullets. Frankly, if it was easy, it probably maybe would have been done years ago, right? It is difficult. The other part of that too is bringing First Nations into that discussion. There is a mandate to consult with First Nations and what they refer to as First Nations referrals when it comes to permitting. So we need to involve First Nations in that discussion. I kind of liken it to looking if you have a list of 10 things that need to be referred to a nation and saying, of these 10, what would you deem to be high risk and very, very important that we discuss and consult with you on? And are there others that we perhaps don't need to do so? And can we agree on that? And I think we have, there's a willingness now to have those discussions. The other important part of that, just before I close, is we have to ensure that First Nations have the capacity to fully engage and participate in major mine permitting. And what do I mean by that? Well, nations, in order to be kind of at the table and on a level playing field, require kind of the technical or administrative or governance capacity to fully participate. When you consider that one of the most recent mines that was permitted and approved in British Columbia, that its environmental assessment, its application to the Environmental Assessment Office, if you stacked all of the binders one over the other, one by one, it'd be about 26 or 27 feet tall. There's a huge amount of work, research, analysis that goes into these EA applications. And so if you were to wheel that in on a wheelbarrow to, the chief and the council's office and say, hey, would you mind having a look through this? They'd say, well, actually we have some other burning issues to deal with here, and I really don't have the analytical capacity to do a good job and to do it in a timely way. Well, I think the Crown has an obligation to ensure that the nation has that capacity, and I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle going forward.
Thank you, Michael. So that brings me to my next question for the minister.
I just want to add what Michael said. Right now what we're doing is particularly, everything he said is, those are the complexities in the system. We have to deal with them. So that's why we now have the infrastructure bill. So any project that come in that has met the key requirements will be expedited through that process. So it will go to the top of the line and it will be expedited that way.
So Minister, how is your ministry engaging with Indigenous communities in resource development, and what kind of supports, just building on what Michael's talking about with respect to critical minerals and economic reconciliation?
Well, when we talk about the First Nations, it's more than economic reconciliation. So first of all, there are cultural issues, there are archaeological issues, there are other issues which they are very attached to the First Nations. The economic reconciliation, of course, is big. So what we are doing right now is, excuse me, what we're doing right now is we are supporting the industry. There are a lot of industries who know how to connect with First Nation, how to develop the trust with First Nations. Trust is the key. And then there are industry, they have very good project, but they have no idea how to connect with the First Nations. Those are the gaps. So we have a department now, we are working with the industry. In those cases, we try to help them how to meet with First Nations. So there are two things when we talk about First Nations. One is G2G relationship, government to government relationship, so government to First Nation relationship. One is the private industry relationship with First Nation. And that's negotiation. If this mine go up on your territory, like what we share in terms of prosperity, jobs, or whatever, right? We don't intervene in that one. That's between these two partners. But what we do, if both sides come together and they say we want to move forward together, we put that project on the fast track because both sides on the same page. On our side, we share the tax revenue which we get from mining with the First Nation. And capacity issue, which Michael said, is the biggest issue right now we are facing. That is, when you go to an even smallest band there, what you see, I've seen that quite a few First Nation bands, that the capacity issue, there may be 7 different forestry projects going on, and they want, to talk to First Nation. First Nation want to talk to them, and they have nobody, they have no resources. Then there are probably 10 different mining projects going on in that area, and they want to negotiate and talk to them, and they have nobody who has the skill set and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the capacity issue. Now we provide capacity issue from our side, but that may not be enough. So we want the federal government to be on the board in that situation. And these are complex tasks. These are not impossible tasks. These tasks can be done. The good thing at this point in time is, in my view, and I hope we continue this way, industry, First Nations, and the government, they all want to move forward. And they all understand the complexities. And that's a good thing.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit more about collaboration and groups coming together. So why don't I ask Richard for this question? Where do you see opportunities for collaboration between LNG, mining, and forestry sectors, either in operations, logistics, workforce development, sustainability initiatives?
All of the above. Yeah, I think it's a great question. I will say, over the 3 years that I've been in this role, we've really, I think, tried quite hard to work together as natural resource sectors because we know that we're stronger together. I think in terms of some of the challenges that you've heard about, many of the challenges are shared. They look a little bit different across industries, but when we talk about permitting challenges, talk about resilient supply chain resiliency, talk about infrastructure, those are all kind of shared challenges that we can stack hands on. Our team, Jeff and Derek here, were actually just in Prince Rupert earlier last week, and when you think about the Port of Prince Rupert, that's such an integral piece of infrastructure that supports all industrial sectors, and really stacking hands on trying to find areas and opportunities where we can enable greater exports. That's really the pathway to success for all sectors. The other piece I would say is, there's been more on the ground opportunities for working together in alignment. Think about emergency response opportunities, wildfire planning, that type of thing. That's been happening a lot more recently. And then even just kind of a joint efforts around sort of clean tech and emissions reduction. There are opportunities to kind of look at applied research, and you know, when I think about those opportunities spreading across multiple different industries, multiple different sectors, it can help to de-risk some of those opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Now, the next question, I'll start with you, Kurt, but I'd like everyone to jump in. How are innovations like automation, AI, clean tech, all of the above, changing the way your industries operate? People often think of forestry, as my dad was a crane operator out on the log barges, and that job didn't change for years. So what do people not know about? Because I know there's a lot going on, and I'd like to learn more.
Sure. Is on or yes, yeah. So for the forest sector, when I think about innovation, I kind of think of a couple different aspects. There can be innovation happening on the sort of production of just our normal traditional products. And there's been a lot of, say, the use of AI, for example, in sawmills. And Canadian technology actually has really led the way, so much so that you know, there's been a lot of investments now outside of Canada and the U.S. South, but it's using Canadian technology in terms of that was developed here, and that's actually like an export that's going around the world. The other aspect is around on the land base, the use, and I think this is shared with other resource sectors as well, is just getting a better understanding of our resource in the province. And the province has really stepped up here in the use of LiDAR and the commitment to spend more money in terms of using LiDAR, which is a remote sensing technique that really can give us a greater understanding of the resources that's out there, how much inventory of forest, for example. And so I think that's some technology that's being used in a traditional sense. But there's also sort of innovation that's happening on the product side of things as well. And so at BC, actually, in this regard, is also, I think, doing a great job. And if we think about growing forest products globally, things like mass timber. And so traditionally, when we used wood products for building, it was always in sort of single-family homes for the U.S. But in a lot of emerging markets, and in Canada as well, a lot of it's more in multi-story, larger buildings that traditionally was steel and concrete. And so if you want to sort of use wood in those structures, mass timber technology is really the way to go. And so, and you know, if you look at UBC, where's the Brock's Commons building, that's I think 16, 17 stories built out of timber, and that's sort of spread. There's almost a race around the world now to sort of build higher and bigger and higher with wood, and these technologies are changing, and there's so I think that's something where innovation is happening. There's also opportunities in terms of using wood for bioenergy, for fuels and so forth. So there's innovation that can happen there, and I think there you look to places like Sweden and Finland. That's happening. I think we're actually a little bit behind on that front, but innovation can occur in new products as well.
Michael.
BC has a substantial and growing cluster of clean technology companies here in the Lower Mainland and throughout. And what's really interesting is if you talk to people in BC's clean tech cluster, they will point to, more often than not, the fact that they were able to scale up because they have been working with the natural resource sectors in our province. There's a company called Sepro Systems out of Burnaby, and many of our mines use their pump system on our tailings facilities. And that pump system really got its chops by working in the oil and gas sector in Alberta, in northern Alberta. So, you know, there's a lot of innovation that happens with technology that was built, say, for the oil and gas sector or oil sands. And then someone in the mining sector looks at it and says, hey, you know, we could use that, and then it gets adopted and adapted and then put into place in the mining sector. But we have, and it really is in some ways a story that not enough light gets shone on, and that is, you know, the mining sector really has been an early adopter of clean and high technology. It is really a high-tech industry. AI, autonomous vehicles. There's a company, just as an example, named MineSense, and they place sensors in the front end of the loaders. The loader goes into the wall in the mine, and it can tell the driver that there's not enough, say, copper, as an example, in the wall there, so it will redirect the driver to go to a different area and can actually calculate what the concentration of copper is in each scoop. Kurt mentioned LiDAR. That's a big thing, and companies like Ideon Technologies and others that, you know, you can now do a kind of a 3D rendering of an ore body that is underground, and you can plot your mine plan, you know, on an annual basis according to that graphic. So it's quite amazing.
So just to add to what Michael said, in mining sector, particularly when I say the innovation and AI, it has done amazing job in many ways, improve productivity, reduce emissions at the same time, and make it easier for people to do that work. It does have impact on the worker side. Like if you talk to workers and unions, they say we lose jobs. For example, I give you an example. We have now, in BC, we have autonomous trucks. So if you go to a mining pit, there are probably 20 trucks and one loader loading those trucks, and they are all autonomous. There's no driver in that. And there's a control room, and people, you know, look in the control room, and those are big 400-ton autonomous trucks, and they load it and they drop it, they come back, and all that. And in one at night, you can run that shift probably by 5 people. 20 trucks and loader and everything is working with 5 people. So that's huge innovation, huge productivity in that way. Similarly, as Michael said, there is those sensors it goes on the front of the bucket of the loader, and it tells, like, it has very small percentage of concentrate of copper. And so that truck will not go to processing. That truck will go straight to the dump. So they save 30% material, which they don't need to go through the process. A lot of betterment for the environment that way. There's a lot of innovation going on. Like the biggest problem, if you look at mining sector to manage, is the tailing pool, what you call the
Pond, yeah.
tailing pool, right? That's the biggest issue, from where the water leaks, chemical leaks, and everything goes into river and all that. The UBC is doing research now. They can actually, because these are in the tailing pond, they have everything. There are chemicals, they have rocks, they have everything mixed in this. So UBC is doing research. They can produce what we call the construction material out of tailing pond. If that happens, if that becomes a reality, we solve a huge problem. Because tailing pond is the key issue when it comes to the environmental assessment and damage. That's a big thing. So last thing I want to say, the last mine, which is a gold mine, is called the Artemis Blackwater Gold Mine, is fully electric, with the exception of trucks. Trucks are autonomous, but within 3 years, those trucks will also become electric. So that mine will be fully electric, no emissions. Like, that's unheard of. That's the level of invention going on.
Richard, did you have anything to add?
Maybe I'll sum up a bit of what I heard, and I could talk about technology a lot. I'm an engineer. I love the nuts and bolts of things. Obviously, in the oil and natural gas sector, there's been a lot of work that's been done in this space, and I even think about something like horizontal drilling, where you're able to drill, 9 kilometers out from a well site. And that allows you to access resources from one single pad location, reducing surface impact and increasing efficiencies. The fact that you can do something like that, I think is just really is amazing. To think that you could drill 32 wells from one single pad instead of having 32 individual locations spread across the land base. Obviously, there's a lot as well that's happening in the emissions reduction space, using AI, using drones, even using satellites in some cases. But I think one of the key things that I think it's important for the audience to take away is, you know, often natural resource sectors are not viewed as being very technological. They're, as you said, it's your father's, you know, forestry sector. But I think it's important to note that there's a lot of technology that happens, and there's a new need for new types of people working in these sectors that there wasn't a need for before, whether they're coders, data scientists, those types of folks. So there is opportunity in the natural resource sector for technology, for innovation. It's not just your dad's oil field.
That's great. Thank you. We have a brave person at the microphone. Please introduce yourself, where you're from.
Hi, guys. I'm Arjun Banga. I'm from Thoughts Wind Systems. I'm the energy and mining sector lead. I've loved the conversation so far. Richard, I loved your analogy of being able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Just along those lines, what are some of the innovations and debottlenecking procedures or ideas that the sector itself, not only for energy but mining as well, can do around permitting and regulations? Because I find that for that, it lands on the operator side rather than the government side, because it's a shared responsibility.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, as Michael said, if there was an easy answer, none of us would probably need to be here. You know, I think there is a recognition by governments that there is a shared role in making sure that the process is as efficient as possible, making sure that the information that needs to be provided as part of the permitting process is really necessary, but also making sure that it's not a race for the bottom. And so there is a balance there that we're always trying to strike. When we talk about the upstream sector, where myself and our colleagues operate, you know, we're in a really complex permitting and regulatory environment, considering recent court cases and other things. I think, you know, from our perspective, what is really helpful is to have a government that really is able to knit together the whole supply chain. So we talk about LNG exports, but then we also need to talk about, you know, how are we de-risking on the policy side for the upstream, whether that's permitting, whether it's climate policy, whether it's fiscal policy. You know, there are little things that need to be all tweaked and aligned along the way. We all can agree that we want more exports, and we think that that's important, and new markets are important. But having government take a look at sort of that holistic view and knitting the downstream side with LNG, the midstream side with the pipelines, and the upstream side with all the wells and the facilities that we represent, that's for us the most important. And I think we certainly have seen a lot of progress with Minister Dix in that role, and also with Premier Eby as well.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about international competitiveness, because Canada has dropped on the list when it comes to competitiveness, and productivity is also an issue. And when I think about the permitting process, that's a part of the challenge, because you can look at some jurisdictions, a permit might take 3 years, and in Canada it takes 10. And I've lived through one of those permitting processes. So it's a challenging piece. And Minister, when I'll come to you first, and maybe you can break down that 35% reduction in permitting time frames that you were talking about earlier. So your long-term vision, you know, how does our industry become more competitive globally, and what do you see our future looking like?
Thank you. First of all, I don't know the permitting timeline of other provinces at this point in time, I will be frank. But the last mine that went through the permitting process in BC, that took less than 5 years. So, which is very competitive. Michael is here, he can comment, which is very competitive. But some of the time what happens when we talk about the permitting timeline is the application is incomplete, or because of various reasons, the corporation come to us and say, we want to pause this because we haven't reached our what you call the investment level which we're expecting. So we want to pause it for 1 year or 2 years. We say it's okay, fine. So that application come back again and revive after 2 years. So things happen like that on us. But the last mine that went through this process was less than 5 years, which is an environmental assessment program and the mining permitting program, the two permitting program every major mine go through. Now, how we reduce the time? So what we are doing now is, we used to do in the past, so the environmental assessment program go first, that includes the environmental side. It also include the First Nation piece, the negotiation, consultation, and everything in that one. So when they used to finish it, after maybe 3 and 3.5 years, we used to start the technical review, which is the mining application, the mining assessment process. And that used to take like 50 months or 60 months, even more, right? So now what we do is, we say, okay, you start the environmental process, right? If the parties are willing, particularly First Nation and the corporation, we start what we call the parallel process. So maybe, let's say, after 50 months, we start also the technical review. So we don't compromise anything on both sides, but we finish everything 16 months early. So that's how we save 35% time, and that's how we are finding more efficiencies at all levels, where we can improve things without changing anything, and then moving forward to make it two things. One is to provide certainty. That means we need to provide fixed timelines. It could be anything. It is a complex thing to do. We need help from the industry. We would need help from the First Nation. But we are moving toward that goal. First, what you call the fixed timelines is one issue, to be more competitive globally, to provide certainty, stability, everything the industry needs, and for investment and everything. But at the same time, now, if you want to sell your product, whether it's steel or copper or whatever, there are now enough people in the global market who want to see your ESG score, like how this has been produced. Are you environmentally responsible? Have you dealt with First Nation issue properly? Or you've done without anything? So that's why it's important for us to make sure we have highest environmental standard. We have highest work with First Nations to, and we have ways to do it. There are different ways, and I think we'll find out in maybe next year, there are different ways to maybe find these realities, make them realities. What we're talking about, that we have maybe pretty good permitting timeline, and we have people on the same page. But it's work to do with First Nation, work to do with industry, and the government has to be part of it.
Thank you, Minister. Who wants to go next? Your vision for the future of your industry.
I can maybe start off. I think for the forest sector, I touched on it in my opening remarks. A key aspect is around timber supply and the wood supply for the sector. It's really, if you're thinking about competitiveness, it's our largest cost. It's about 70% of the cost of producing lumber. And it's really not just about the sort of, I guess, the cost of it, but it's really, for the province, it's around the certainty. There's so much uncertainty right now on the access to the land base in British Columbia. And the goalposts have always been changing, where we've gotten decisions where, around the old growth decision, and then around moving more of the land base into protected or conservation areas. And so, we totally understand the need to protect biodiversity and environmental goods, but it's just the unpredictability, the uncertainty around it. And so I think in order for our sector to have a sort of longer term, to create a vision, we have to resolve that uncertainty. There's always going to be uncertainty, but it's extremely high right now in the province. And so one of the concepts we've been sort of advocating for is sort of like a working forest designation. It's almost a zoning concept, where you would zone an area, like this is going to be for the production for the industry, and then we'll manage other parts, other zones more for biodiversity and wildlife, but this is really going to be managed more intensively to supply those sort of longer-term key supplies for the sector. And I think as you can sort of if that was to occur, you would see, and uncertainty was sort of reduced, you could see people wanting to invest back in British Columbia. But right now, the investment climate within British Columbia is really bad for the forest sector. People BC-based who got their start here and are still headquartered here, they're investing elsewhere. And a lot of it's around the uncertainty over the land base.
Okay. Thank you. Michael?
Well, if you'll have me back next year, I'll report out on the vision. And the vision is that permitting and approvals with respect to mining in BC is a competitive advantage. And is such that capital markets would respond positively to that vision, that we will generate incoming investment in our sector to build new mines and maintain a buoyant industry here, keep British Columbians working, have a new generation of miners in our province, a greater supply chain where it makes a real material impact in urban British Columbia that's felt, and that we're able to advance economic reconciliation with our First Nation partners. That's our vision, and it starts with the work that is underway now to try to kind of identify the roadblocks that are in the way on permitting, mitigate those, and move to a new footing when it comes to permitting authorizations of major mines.
Awesome. And Richard?
I think from my perspective, I think my vision is that the next decade can be BC's kind of LNG decade. By early 2030s, we'll probably have, we will have LNG Canada Phase 1 online. Hopefully we'll have LNG Canada Phase 2, the Silicium's LNG project, Woodfibre, Tilbury, having multiple LNG projects altogether contributing to that, placing BC as one of the top 5 LNG producers in the world. I think having LNG from BC having one of the lowest carbon footprints because of electrification, because of the methane rules, is going to be very important. Having strong Indigenous participation and equity participation will be another key differentiator, as the minister noted. We have a lot of natural gas in BC, and in my mind, natural gas is one of BC's most valuable assets. To me, BC LNG is how we share that value with the world.
Thank you. And before I wrap it up, Minister, I'll give you the last word. What is your vision for BC in your new ministry?
Well, I first of all want to say thanks to you and Surrey Board of Trade for organizing this. I think this was it looks to me at least very engaging and very meaningful exercise. My vision for the BC mining sector, I would say that that permitting, as you have heard from almost everybody, permitting is the key issue. We need to work, every piece of, need to find every piece of solution we can in our toolbox to fix the permitting timeline. As I said to you earlier, we are working on it, and our goal is to find fixed timelines. So that's one, as Michael said. Once you have fixed timelines, the probability of raising capital for projects becomes very easy. Because stability, people know that, how much time it's going to take. It is easy. So that's one which we need to do. We need to, of course, the good thing in mining sector is that mining sector is diversified in a way that we will never be in trouble. Let me put it this way, because almost 90% of the product from mining sector goes to Asia, different countries. So we're not dependent on any one big, giant buyer. So that's the beauty of the mining sector. So that's, and we need to do more, what you call the diversification of the mining sector. The third piece is that we need to find ways to find quick paths to complete the application, and that will be how industry, First Nation, and we work together. If we can shorten that time by 35%, then we can shorten a lot of stuff. That is also a very complex issue, but I must say this, there are nations who know now exactly how it is done, and they know how to talk to the industry. There are companies, amazing companies, who know how to talk to the First Nation and how to come to, negotiate a deal. There are. And I think that knowledge is spreading, but we need to push more, work more. If we can deal with the, what you call the First Nation reconciliation piece, we can find more time to do the environmental process better, but not compromising anything. And we are very diversified and find the fixed timelines. I think we will be way ahead where we are today.
Thank you so much. You know, when I was listening to all of you, I made a few notes. Excuse me. And so, Minister, when I heard you say concurrent review process, essentially, that'll make a huge difference. And perhaps we can show the feds how it's done in a year's time. We'll have a great conversation again. Fixed timelines. The reason we have challenges with investment is because it's an uncertain place to invest right now. So thank you for taking a look at that. And of course, our ESG score is one of the reasons that international investors do look to Canada, because we have a great score and we do things properly. When I think about the forestry sector, which of course is close to my heart, the access to the land base and land use plan. Really, a land use plan can help us with not only our resource sector, but housing, agriculture, having a forward-thinking, proactive plan where we know what we're doing with that land instead of fighting against each sector, I think will really make a difference. And so I support you on that. The BC permitting approvals process is our competitive advantage. Yes. Michael, you're coming back next year, and that's what we're hopefully going to be saying, and everyone's knocking down your door to talk about doing mining in BC.
I'm in.
And of course, Richard, thank you for bringing the technology to the conversation and workforce futures. And for all of you for being here, I really appreciate this intelligent conversation. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have. But before you go, please help me in thanking our speakers. Yes, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today and for providing insights and clarity into the impacts of your industries on our economy. Thank you once again to our sponsors, our supporting sponsors of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers and Wood Fibre LNG, our progress partners, Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan by SNF Group Benefits, Focus College and Western Community College. As always, my hat goes off to my amazing staff team who make sure that we all look like we know what we're doing at the very least. And thank you. Thanks, team. And thank you to you, our audience, for your participation and your engagement. Before you leave, I just want to tell you about some events that we have coming up, and hopefully you can attend. On Thursday, we will have Building BC's Future with Minister Diana Gibson of Jobs, Innovation and Economic Growth. So Jedi, if you are a Star Wars fan, I expect you to be here. May 30th, discussion with BC Minister of Post-Secondary Education and Future Skills, Honorable Ann Kang. And on June 5th, if you're a golfer, it's the place to be. Fun in the Sun Golf Tournament. And check out our website at businessinsurrey.com for more information about these events. Thank you, everyone. Make it a great business day.